Only education does that dumb shit. Wait, that's live. Hey, hi, Mom and Dad. Nice talking to you. PG-13. So here's the question that we're kind of exploring right now. That if I have sine theta equals something, that this thing that I give you, okay, there's only two options. Either it comes on the chart, right? And if it's on the chart, by the way, then it can be on the non-calculated portion of the test, right? See, I could say to you sine theta equals 1/2 and put this on the non-calculated portion of the test, and you go like this. Oh, piece of cake. That's like, I don't know which one. It's one of those ones on the chart, okay? The very best students go like this. Hey, that's pi over 6. And I go like this. Yeah, good job. Pi over 6. And then you know that kind of becomes your reference angle. Then you're just trying to figure out when is sine positive. That's quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. And you just say the answer is pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. Does that make sense? But where things get ugly, right? Because everybody's got that friend who takes things too far. And if you ain't got that friend, then you are the damn friend. All right? Because somebody's got to take things too far, and then they say sine theta equals 3/5, and you're like, whoa, not on the chart. But you do get the calculator. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to go to your calculator. I apologize. I have anger management issues sometimes. And when stuff doesn't work, I tend to want to punch it. I'm looking for something that when I plug it in, I get 3/5. Does that make sense? How do I figure out what number that is? Well, first of all, I got to make sure I'm in degrees, because we're going to do this in degrees. So I'm going to hit mode, and if you're following along in class, please press mode, and we're going to go down to where it says degree, and we're going to make sure our calculator is in degree mode. Okay? So that allows me to, if I type in something like, cosine 60 degrees, that should say it's 1/2, which is, that's 60 degrees is pi over 3. Does that make sense? All right. So what I need to figure out is sine of what angle, sine of what gives me 3/5. And the way you do that is you do arc sine 3/5. That's inverse sine. And that will give me the angle directly. You see, that will give me an angle. And if I do sine of that angle, I ought to get 0.6. Does that make sense? So this is called arc sine, and we're going to deal with arc sine a lot later on. All right, so don't think that this is our first time we're dealing with it, and we're never going to deal with it again. This is arc sine. Okay, 3/5. All right. Now, that tells me the angle in quadrant 1. That gives me the answer in quadrant 1. So what I know is that I need theta to be equal to I need theta to be equal to 36.87 degrees. Does that make sense? But that's 36.87 in quadrant 1. What would it be? Where else is sine positive? Where?
Quadrant 4.
Quadrant 4.
Oh, quadrant 6.
Quadrant 2. It's all good. It's all good. No judgment on that, actually. I mean, hell, you're just learning it. If you're a professional, you'd be teaching the damn course. Okay. That angle is 36.87 degrees. How do I find out what it is from 0 to 360? Subtract it from 180. So you would do 180 minus that 36.87. 143.13. Does that make sense? That is if the number I give you is not on the chart. So there's two types of ways I can ask this. I can ask it to you so the number is on the chart, or I can ask it to you so the number is off the chart. Off the chart, you got to use the calculator. Does that make sense? And I would encourage you, go look at the problems in chapter 6. Some of them will ask you like sine of 52 degrees. That is a calculator discussion. Like you got to have a calculator to do sine 52 degrees. Okay? There's no way you can do that other than use the calculator. You know, what's secant of 57 degrees? Well, in order to do secant of 57 degrees, you got to use the calculator. All right? You got to use the calculator for that. All right? Now, I can ask this a different way. I can ask this a different way, and I can ask it like this. 2 sine squared theta minus sine theta minus 1 is equal to 0, and find theta between 0 and 2 pi. And this problem can be on the non-calculator portion. This problem can be on the non-calculator portion. Okay? The reason why it can be on the non-calculator portion is because in order to solve that, you have to factor. So this is 2 sine theta plus 1 sine theta minus 1 is equal to 0. Do we agree? Sine theta minus 1 is equal to 0 means sine theta is equal to 1. Right? 2 sine theta equals negative 1. Sine theta equals negative 1/2. Okay. Now, when is sine theta equal to 1? Well, again, if I've done anything this term, please learn this chart. I don't know about you, but I'm getting kind of tired of writing it. Some of y'all going, you ain't written it enough yet. Pi over 4, pi over 3, pi over 6. 0, 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2. 1, 0, 1/2, square root of 2 over 2, square root of 3 over 2, 1. Remember that to do that, I did 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, square root, square root, square root, square root, divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, right? Right now, I don't do that anymore. I just give you the final form. So as we look at this problem, when is sine theta 1/2? Well, sine theta is 1/2. Watch this. Oh, I don't know how to do it. But you know, if I did, I'd highlight this right here. Bam. Sine theta is 1/2 is pi over 6. Now here's the kicker. This is sine theta is negative 1/2. So the fact that the answer is pi over 6 doesn't help me because I got to know which quadrant sine theta is negative. What quadrants have sine theta being negative?
There's 3 and 4.
So this is pi over 6. And this is pi over 6. Does that make sense? Which is 7 pi over 6. This one is 7 pi over 6. And this one is 11 pi over 6. Okay. And you can get 11 pi over 6 by doing 2 pi minus pi over 6. 11 pi over 6. One of the things that I'm not naive about at all, I've been doing this for a really long time, the way I quickly throw fractions around is really hard for students early on because it's just a different way of thinking, and it doesn't take me long to add 2 pi and subtract 2 pi and do all that stuff. Students go like this, holy shit, wait, where did you get 7 pi over 6 from? It's pi plus pi over 6. So it's 6 pi over 6 plus pi over 6 is 7 pi over 6. Okay. The more you do it, the better you get at that. Because you'll notice that there's a pattern between which ones we use all the time. Okay. Now, when sine theta equal to 1? There's only one spot where that happens. And that's pi over 2. So this answer is pi over 2, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. If I have to do it in degrees, I would just adjust that to degrees, which we could do relatively easy, right? Because pi over 6 is 30 degrees, so that's 210, 330, 90. If I have to do all theta, I would tack 2 pi onto all of those, 2k pi onto all of those. Does that make sense? All right. So you should be able to solve factoring as well. You should be able to solve factoring as well. All right. I'm going to stop the video here.